On the corner of Main Street and Lafayette Avenue, where the reflective skyscrapers glitter in the morning sun, life brims with its usual energy. Streams of professionals dash towards their offices. Delivery drivers unload packages from trucks while tourists snap photos of the eclectic urban skyline. The scene is quiet, vibrant, and annoyingly predictable until a breathtaking red Ferrari barrels into sight, only to abruptly gasp to a halt. Its engine sputters and dies as if in protest, caught mid-roar. For a moment, all attention turns to the anomaly, the crowd collectively holding its breath. The city almost seems to hush, drawing its focus inward on the radiant machine now silenced by some unknown failure. Emerging from the driver's seat is none other than Preston Cole, an imposing figure in every conceivable way. Towering and sharply dressed, his tailored suit frames the silhouette of a man whose confidence is almost unbearable. Preston's name alone conjures images of wealth, the jet-setting billionaire who built one of the most lucrative technology conglomerates in the country. To the many people watching, he is not merely a man. He is a living symbol, the human embodiment of success. Yet, at this moment, there's nothing polished or collected about him. Red-faced and visibly frustrated, he slams the door behind him with a force that rattles the onlookers, his carefully curated aura flickering in the spotlight of mechanical failure. "Unbelievable!" Preston barks, pacing in sharp staccato movements while simultaneously barking into his phone. It's clear to everyone he's talking to his assistant or someone equally unlucky to be on the receiving end of his wrath. "This is unacceptable. Do you even understand what kind of morning I have? I'm stranded in—" Preston stops mid-rant, his piercing eyes catching something, or rather, someone on the other side of the car. Approaching quietly from the pedestrian lane is a woman, her every move possessing an understated grace. She's dressed casually, a pair of worn jeans and an oversized denim jacket that hangs loosely on her shoulders, betraying nothing about her identity with its simplicity. Her brown skin shines under the sunlight, her coiled hair tied into a loose bun as a few windswept curls frame her face. There's something steady about her, unshaken or uninterested, even as Preston's panic vibrates in the air around her. She comes to a full stop beside the Ferrari, hands tucked into her jacket. Spectators inch forward. It's only natural in a city where anything slightly out of the ordinary becomes the immediate center of attention. What's she doing, everyone wonders? Admiring the car, maybe? Preston doesn't hesitate, cutting across the escalating murmurs with his signature steel-edged authority. "Excuse me!" His voice slices across the crowd's quiet deliberation. It carries annoyance tinged with disbelief. "Please, step away from the car. This isn't some tourist exhibit." The woman doesn't immediately respond. Instead, she tilts her head, scanning the Ferrari's frame with a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips, a smile rooted less in amusement and more in discovery. Beneath Preston's pointed words, there seems to be no reaction. No need to defend herself against the obvious judgment. But then, unexpectedly, she crouches, her hands brushing along the curve of the car's hood as though listening to something only she can hear. Preston stiffens, his words momentarily halting as he watches this peculiar interaction unfold. "What do you think you're doing?" he asks again, this time slower, sharper, every word enunciated. The woman doesn't look up, instead running her fingers delicately just below the Ferrari insignia before finally stepping back to inspect the car's rear engine. Calmly, she straightens and turns to Preston, her voice as composed as a still lake. "It's overheated," she says plainly, as though she were commenting on the weather. Not surprising in a car like this, especially if it hasn't been tuned properly. The statement ripples through the small crowd, now visibly invested in the unfolding drama. A few smirk at this seemingly out-of-place woman, who dares to comment on something so out of her perceived domain. Others simply watch with a growing curiosity steered by her unshaken demeanor. Preston's jaw tightens. "Excuse me?" She glances at him now, her gaze level and unwavering. "You have overheating in your airflow valves. It'll stall your engine every time if ignored." She shrugs, motioning toward the car. "It's not that uncommon. I can fix it if you'd like." A deafening kind of silence takes root as Preston processes her words. There is no world in which this woman, a stranger on the street with no visible credentials, no apparent reason to be anywhere near his car, knows more about his Ferrari than he does, let alone how to fix it. It's preposterous. "You?" His disbelief is boiling over now. He lets out a dry, humorless laugh, waving dismissively as his eyes dart back toward the vehicle. I don't even know who you are, and I'm supposed to trust you to touch something worth more than most houses? The woman shrugs again, her calmness refusing to let itself shrink beneath his doubt. Doesn't matter if you trust me, she states plainly, but you're not going anywhere unless it's fixed. So, she gestures toward the now silent Ferrari, her meaning clear. If you want this resolved now, I'm your best shot. The tension reaches its apex. Preston's hand hovers over his phone, clearly considering whether to call the manufacturer's emergency hotline or perhaps enlist his driver to come retrieve him instead. All options seem better than indulging whatever strange moment is currently unfolding. And yet, something in the woman's tone, its sureness, its utter disregard for entertaining his doubt, gives him pause. I hope you aren't expecting a thank you if you mess this up. His voice drips with cynicism, but the choice is made. Preston steps aside, granting her unspoken permission to proceed. Her response is one of silence and confident action. With an economy of movement that seems almost theatrical, she removes her denim jacket, folding it over one of the Ferrari's side mirrors before approaching the rear engine hatch. She works quickly, unbothered by the gathering crowd or the occasional murmurs of disbelief. Spectators whisper amongst themselves. Some take videos, a few even call friends to describe what's rapidly becoming the most captivating event of their day. The woman ignores it all, her focus locked onto the task at hand. Every attempted mockery dies in the throats of her doubters as minute by minute passes, revealing an undeniable fact. She knows exactly what she's doing. Preston watches in silence now. His phone, held limply in his hand, has gone dark. The irritation that colored his every word a moment ago now battles with something unfamiliar, hesitant admiration. Who is she, and how does she seem so certain, so informed, when this entire situation feels absurd? Then, just as the mystery of her abilities begins to tip fully into intrigue, she straightens. The engine hums quiet at first, but steadily growing with strength. Her voice, when next she speaks, carries a subtle satisfaction. Try it now, she says simply, dusting off her hands. Preston stares as though she'd just spoken in tongues. He steps toward the driver's side, hesitating only for a fraction of a second before gripping the door handle. Sitting, adjusting for good measure, he clicks the ignition. To his astonishment and to the crowd's delight, the Ferrari purrs back to life, its familiar roar filling the street like an overdue apology. Instead of responding immediately, Preston lingers, listening to the engine as if to confirm what his senses are already telling him. Finally, he comments, his voice quieter yet heavier with begrudging respect. How did you... The woman, now slipping her jacket back on, spares him no indulgent explanations. I know cars, she replies with a simplicity that leaves little room for interrogation. As she prepares to leave, the soft yet sharp wail of sirens pierces through the scene. Red and blue lights dance along the glassy reflections of the surrounding buildings. A police cruiser pulls up to the curb, and the crowd disperses slightly, giving room to the officers stepping out. One of them, tall and burly, scans the scene before locking his piercing gaze on Preston and the mysterious woman who now lingers between interaction and escape. Is everything all right here? His voice is neutral, but there's a weight beneath his almost too measured words that suggests an undercurrent of suspicion. All eyes dart nervously between Preston and the woman, anxiety building immediately anew and leaving the world breathless once more as this new chapter begins to unfold. A cliffhanger moment, the scene fades to black unnervingly abruptly, leaving the question suspended mid-air. Who is this woman really? And how far will this unexpected encounter ripple into their lives as the outlines of a far deeper narrative begin just beneath the surface? Onlookers wear curiosity on their faces, eyes darting between Preston and the mysterious woman while the colorful red and blue sirens bounce off polished steel and glass shop fronts. The police officer's question friskily hangs in the air, a match poised above dry kindling. Preston, still half-seated in the now purring Ferrari, tenses, his grip tight on the wheel as the lines of his confident persona begin to blur. For all his power, this scene isn't in his control. And neither is his response. Without missing a beat, the woman offers an answer. Her tone is deliberate, neither submissive nor contentious. There's no problem here, officer, just a bit of bad luck corrected. The officer's eyes flick towards her, their weight heavy with unsaid judgment, before shifting to Preston. What's your take, sir? Everything all right? For a moment, Preston hesitates, torn between asserting his dominance over the situation and an unspoken debt of gratitude to the woman who solved what seemed unsolvable minutes ago. His lips part to speak, but the woman's gaze cuts through him. A calm, unshakable reminder of her singular assistance. Yes, Preston's voice emerges restrained. Everything's fine. My car broke down and this… He pauses, searching for the right label only to realize how little he actually knows about her. Woman helped me get it running again. If the officer notices Preston's discomfort, he doesn't show it. Instead, he returns his focus to the stranger. Lady, I'll need your name for the record, he says, shifting to a bureaucratic neutrality, though the veins of doubt every so slightly ripple underneath it. Her response is simple, unwavering. Don't see why you would, considering no laws were broken. I fixed a car, nothing earth-shaking about it. The officer bristles ever so slightly. He adjusts his uniform, standing straighter as his gaze sharpens. It doesn't work quite like that. Now name? Silence falls again. Her eyes hold his, a silent battle fought not with the sharp clang of swords, but the quiet fortitude of someone who both knows and challenges authority, standing unbowed before it. Preston watches, captivated in spite of himself. Who in the world is she? Amara, she finally says, not volunteering anything more. Her gaze remains level, unwavering. The officer narrows an eye. Amara what? He starts to press, but another voice speaks up, cutting through the atmosphere like a knife. That's enough, Henry! A firm feminine tone calls from behind. The crowd parts slightly to reveal another officer, her brown hair pulled into a tight ponytail. There's an authoritative grace to her that makes even Henry shift uncomfortably for a second. Detective Monroe, the male officer greets, his voice tipping on the edge of explanation. I was just managing the situation, I understand. Detective Monroe interjects, her tone clipped yet diplomatic. She steps closer, surveying the scene with an astuteness trained by years of investigations. Her eyes linger briefly on Amara, narrowing with the kind of interest born not of suspicion, but curiosity. Monroe tilts her head toward Preston, her tone softening. I see you've had some trouble. Ferrari, huh? Gorgeous machine, but tricky when something's off. You all right here? Yes. Thank you, Detective. Preston's response is overly quick, almost eager to cement that the situation is resolved, as if reinforced by authority. Good, Monroe replies. She finally returns her focus to Amara, sharpness tempered by an almost imperceptible nod of respect. All right, let's wrap this up. Everyone's time is valuable, no need to waste it. Move along, folks. She waves the gathering crowd away efficiently. Henry looks hesitant to disengage, but at Monroe's subtle glance, he retreats to the cruiser. Amara smirks faintly, and Monroe catches it, not missing the smallest thread of this interaction. Yet the detective betrays nothing other than pragmatic resolve, folding her arms and addressing Amara. You're good at what you do. It shows, she says, her voice measured, layered. But talent like that draws both opportunity and danger. Advice from me? Be careful who you surprise next time. With that, Monroe moves back toward her car. There's no threat in her words, just the kind of simple truth that cuts deeper than anything malicious ever could. Amara knows this. She watches Monroe go, her expression inscrutable. The energy dissipates as the street fills with the usual city banter again. The police cruiser pulls away, leaving a vacuum where intensity had simmered. Yet the aftershocks remain. Preston steps away from his car, standing awkwardly beside it. Words seem to accumulate in his throat, but refuse to land until finally. He asks, Are you always this confounding? Amara laughs quietly. Not a scoff, but an actual laugh, soft, unrestrained, surprising. Confounding how? She replies. For fixing things? Or showing where confidence starts falling apart? He stares at her, for once unable to craft a response from his usual arsenal of dominance and control. Her presence has unraveled some part of the carefully curated narration he lives within, and it leaves him untethered. Preston starts, falters, then begins again. Look, you clearly know your way around a car. What else? Amara tilts her head with theatrical deliberation, as though considering playing along with this unusual moment of disarmed humility from one of the most imposing men in the country. Stuff, she finally says. I know stuff. Preston sighs, exasperated but veiling intrigue. Would you stop being cryptic for a second? I'm not used to people who don't account for your ego. Amara finishes the question for him, fully aware of how sharp the edge is. Yet, unlike most who toy with candor like weapons, she doesn't linger there. She softens the point just as quickly. Fine, cars are my thing, so is not explaining myself unless necessary. Preston glares. And that's supposed to clarify? Work with what you got, Mr. Billionaire, she fires back, leaning on her singular word choice for mocking effect. He sighs, rubbing the bridge of his nose in a rare gesture of human exasperation. All right, if you're not interested in self-advertising, fine. How much do I owe you? Amara glances at him curiously, the slightest twist stirring in her unreadable demeanor. Owe me? Not much. Call it $10, because you needed help. And a lesson. Lesson? Yep. She steps out from lingering near the Ferrari. Lesson 1. Money won't always fix what breaks quickly. Her words linger ominously in the rhythm of exchange, landing something deep Preston hadn't prepared for. Astonishingly, ridiculously, his instincts kick in where weakness momentarily ignited. Deflection, charisma, and strategy. So, Preston begins again. Amara, was it? Next rush job miracle thing you'll bill? Amara shrugs with open-ended amusement now. Got places to be. People think they know what they're getting until things deliberately challenge assumptions. Slow, long pause. Snaps. No interruption left. Femi Preston follow through amidst fading visuals. The vibrations of tension from the unfolding events earlier refuse to settle, even as Main Street gradually reclaims its regular rhythm. The crowd disperses reluctantly, a few lingering glances cast back toward the striking red Ferrari and the peculiar pair that continues to defy expectation. Preston still stands awkwardly by his car, disbelief and indignation battling for dominance within him. Amara, on the other hand, has slipped seamlessly into the role of an everyday bystander, her casual demeanor cloaked in a quiet kind of authority that suggests a story far more complex than the one she chooses to reveal. You sure know how to make an impression, Preston finally mutters, breaking the silence as if compelled to fill the void her presence creates. His tone is clipped, calculated, a half-hearted attempt to reclaim the upper hand he once unquestionably wielded. But to Amara, it's no more than white noise against the backdrop of her own unshaken sense of self. She glances at him briefly, her expression unreadable, as though weighing whether he's worth another moment of her time. Impressions aren't hard to make, she replies evenly, her voice as calm as glass. It's what comes next that matters. Preston stiffens. He's not accustomed to being spoken to with such indifference, let alone by someone who seems, in every respect, utterly unbothered by his influence or position. For a man who commands rooms with his presence alone, who has the world at his beck and call, this interaction feels like stepping into uncharted territory. All right, Amara, he says, attempting a tone more conciliatory, though the sharp edges of his frustration haven't entirely dulled. You've made your point. Consider me impressed. But you can't just leave me hanging like this. You clearly know your stuff, but who are you really? And why exactly do you know so much about a car like this? Amara raises an eyebrow at his persistence. Who I am doesn't matter, she replies curtly, brushing invisible dust off her denim jacket. And as for the car, let's just say I've spent enough time around engines to know how they work. That's all. Preston exhales sharply, his patience fraying. That's all? You solved a problem 3 professional mechanics couldn't even begin to diagnose, and I'm supposed to believe it's just casual knowledge? Come on, give me something real. Her lips twitch, the faintest trace of a smile ghosting across her face. You're used to people giving you what you want, aren't you? Used to answers, compliance, control. Her words land like a gentle but pointed jab, measured, not malicious. But sometimes, the best answers are the ones you don't get handed to you on a silver platter. Figure it out yourself, Mr. Billionaire. Before Preston can formulate a retort, she turns away, her movements unhurried, deliberate. It's as if the entire encounter has been nothing more than a brief detour in her day of fleeting interaction that holds far more significance for him than it does for her. And perhaps that's the truth of it. But as Amara takes her first step to leave, something shifts in the atmosphere. A sharp metallic clang reverberates through the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. Heads snap toward the source of the commotion, a shattered storefront window just down the street, its jagged edges glinting ominously in the sunlight. 2 masked figures leap through the wreckage, their movements frantic and uncoordinated. One clutches a duffel bag stuffed to near bursting, while the other wields a crowbar, swinging it recklessly to ward off anyone who might consider intervening. The scene explodes into chaos. Shouts of alarm ripple through the crowd, sending pedestrians scattering like startled birds. Cars screech to abrupt halts, their drivers honking in panic as the masked duo barrels onto the road, weaving recklessly through oncoming traffic. Within moments, the illusion of normalcy evaporates, replaced by a visceral sense of danger. "Stay back!" one of the criminals bellows, his voice muffled by his mask but no less menacing for it. The crowbar glints menacingly in his grip, a crude yet effective instrument of intimidation. His accomplice, clutching the duffel bag tightly, stops short, scanning the chaotic scene with wild, darting eyes. It's clear they hadn't planned for this level of attention or resistance. Preston freezes, his mind racing. Every instinct screams at him to retreat, to get back in his car and remove himself from the escalating danger. But something roots him to the spot, a strange amalgamation of curiosity, fear, and an unshakable awareness that this is no longer a situation he can simply observe from the sidelines. Amara, however, remains utterly unfazed. While others around her dart for cover or fumble with their phones to call for help, she stands her ground, her expression calm but calculating. Her gaze locks onto the masked figures with a precision that's almost unsettling, as though she's already several steps ahead of whatever is about to unfold. "You've got to be kidding me," Preston mutters under his breath, casting a nervous glance at her. "What are you doing? Get out of here before—" "Relax," she cuts him off, her tone as steady as ever. "They're amateurs." "Amateurs?" he hisses incredulously, his voice rising in pitch. "They're waving weapons around. In case you hadn't noticed, this isn't exactly the time to play it cool." Amara doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she takes a deliberate step forward, her movements slow and unthreatening. To Preston's horror, the masked men notice her approach, their postures tensing instantly. "Stop right there!" the crowbar-wielding man barks, pointing the weapon in her direction. "I said stay back!" "I heard you," Amara replies evenly, her voice carrying an authority that belies her casual appearance. "But shouting isn't going to help you now. Neither will that crowbar." The man falters, caught off guard by her calm demeanor. His accomplice nudges him urgently, whispering something inaudible, but the tension between the three is palpable. "What do you think you're doing?" Preston hisses again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Amara's gaze flickers briefly toward him, a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. "No," she says simply. "I'm trying to stop anyone else from getting hurt." Before Preston can respond, the situation escalates. One of the masked men makes a sudden, panicked move, lunging toward a bystander with the crowbar raised high. There's a collective gasp from the crowd, followed by a split second of frozen silence where time seems to hang suspended. But Amara is faster. In a blur of movement, she intercepts the attacker, her actions a seamless combination of speed and precision. With a calculated step, she sidesteps his strike, her hand shooting out to grip his wrist with surprising strength. A single fluid motion and the crowbar clatters to the ground, disarmed and harmless. The crowd erupts in a mixture of gasps and murmurs, their fear momentarily giving way to awe. Even Preston is stunned into silence, his disbelief mounting with each passing second. "Who is this woman?" The would-be attacker staggers back, clutching his wrist and staring at Amara with a mix of anger and fear. His accomplice hesitates, their grip tightening on the duffel bag as they scan the scene for an escape route. But it's too late. The distant wail of sirens becomes audible, growing louder with every heartbeat. Amara steps back, her focus shifting to the second criminal. "It's over," she says, her tone firm but devoid of malice. "Drop the bag and walk away. You don't want to make this worse." For a moment, it seems her words might resonate. The second masked figure wavers, their stance uncertain, but the sound of approaching police cars snaps them back into fight-or-flight mode. With a desperate cry, they bolt, leaving their accomplice behind. Amara doesn't chase after them. Instead, she gestures for the stunned bystanders to move aside, clearing a path for the responding officers as they flood the scene. Within moments, the remaining criminal is apprehended, their resistance futile against the overwhelming force of law enforcement. As the situation stabilizes, the crowd begins to disperse once more, their murmurs a mixture of relief and speculation. Preston remains rooted to the spot, his mind struggling to process what he's just witnessed. Amara, meanwhile, retrieves her denim jacket and slips it back on, her expression as composed as ever. "What was that?" Preston finally manages, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Who are you?" Amara pauses, her gaze meeting his with an intensity that sends shivers down his spine. For the first time, there's a flicker of something deeper in her expression, something raw, unguarded, and impossibly complex. "Just someone who knows how to fix things," she says quietly. "Doesn't matter if it's a car or a crisis." Before he can press further, the sound of a police officer's voice interrupts them. Detective Monroe strides onto the scene, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd before landing squarely on Amara. There's a curious tilt to her head as she approaches, her demeanor equal parts impressed and intrigued. "Seems like you have a habit of showing up in the right place at the right time," Monroe remarks, her tone laced with subtle curiosity. "Or the wrong place, depending on how you look at it." Amara shrugs non-committally. "Luck of the draw." Monroe studies her for a moment longer, then nods. "Well, whatever it is, you've got skills. But next time, maybe let us handle it." "I'll keep that in mind," Amara replies, her tone neutral, but the faintest hint of a smirk tugs at her lips, betraying her true thoughts. As Monroe turns to debrief her team, Preston steps closer to Amara, his curiosity now burning brighter than ever. "This isn't over," he tells her quietly, his voice low but resolute. "I don't know who you are or what your deal is, but I'm going to find out." Amara meets his gaze, unflinching. "Good luck with that," she says, her voice carrying the weight of a challenge, and with that, she walks away, disappearing into the bustling crowd as if she were never there. Recap. Amara effortlessly disarms a dangerous situation involving masked criminals, redefining Preston's perception of her capabilities. As Detective Monroe grows increasingly intrigued by her mysterious presence, the tension between Amara's secrets and Preston's determination to uncover them builds, setting the stage for deeper revelations to come. The relentless buzz of the city presses forward, though there's an edge in the air, a palpable unease stitched into the rhythm of unfamiliar footsteps and furtive glances. Somewhere in the crowd, Amara is just another face blending into the mosaic of New York life. Her denim jacket creaks slightly as she skirts the curb, weaving between taxicabs and food vendors with all the ease of someone who's lived the city's tempo for too long to be fazed by it. But her pace isn't hurried. Each step is deliberate, as though she knows exactly where she's headed without ever needing to second-guess. By the time she slows and ducks into a narrow alley off Mercer Street, the noise of the world has quieted to a muffle. The alley itself is nondescript. Bricks darkened by decades of grime, a graffiti-scarred dumpster, scattered piles of refuse. It's the kind of place teetering between invisibility and suspicion. Just ordinary enough to be ignored, but holding the faint energy of something more layered. Amara pauses mid-step, her gaze subtly sweeping her surroundings. Her silence is sharp, her posture taut with anticipation. Then she moves toward a battered metal door tucked into the farthest recess of the alley's shadows. No sign, no markings, just rust eating at its edges. From her jacket pocket, she pulls an unassuming black keycard, gliding it across an almost imperceptible seam in the door. There's a quiet beep, faint, mechanical, and the door whispers open. The instant it clicks shut behind her, everything shifts. Inside, a stark contrast. Soft, sterile light hums overhead, illuminating a space that is nearly surgical in its order. Metal cabinets line the walls, meticulously labeled, while a long central work table holds an array of precision tools, diagnostic scanners, and blueprints. Screens flicker with rotating schematics, split-screen feeds of surveillance cameras, and cascading lines of code. A faint aroma of machine oil and ozone permeates the air. This isn't a place that invites curiosity, it demands purpose. Amara tosses her jacket onto a nearby stool, rolling up her sleeves as she approaches one of the glowing terminals. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, the rhythm almost hypnotic as windows cascade open. Search results, encrypted records, and something far more secretive than the average city dweller could comprehend. She leans closer, her eyes narrowing as incomprehensible strings of data unravel into an intricate web of connections. The hum of the monitors pulses in sync with her concentration. She's not alone for long. A faint vibration runs through the floor, moments before another concealed door swings inward, revealing a figure framed in the threshold. His presence is all sharp angles, broad shoulders wrapped in a sleek, tailored jacket that screams efficiency. Yet despite the crispness of his appearance, his expression is far from controlled. Graham Torres, covert operations liaison for the agency's most enigmatic experiments, strides into the room with an urgency that ripples through the air. You're late, he drawls, though there's no genuine reprimand in his tone. If anything, it's a statement fueled by strained patience. I wasn't aware I had a schedule to keep, Amara replies without looking up, her voice casual but clipped. Thought I was off the grid. Torres makes a sound caught between amusement and frustration. You're not off the grid, Amara. You're a beacon hiding in plain sight, and today you've burned brighter than ever. Want to explain what exactly went down on Main Street? Nothing to explain, she retorts, her fingers pausing briefly to adjust the resolution on a grainy freeze frame that looks eerily like Preston Cole's face. Car broke down, I fixed it. Some idiots thought robbery was a good idea. Bad timing for them. Torres leans against the edge of the table, crossing his arms as he scans the screen, his gaze briefly catching the data stream. You know it's only a matter of time before they start putting the pieces together, right? You can't keep doing this. You've been flagged twice already. Monroe's one thing, but that Cole guy? Billionaire magnates don't let mysteries sit unsolved for long. Amara's lips curl into a faint smirk, though there's no warmth behind it. Let them piece it together, she replies. They'll find what they always find. Nothing. Torres exhales sharply, raking a hand through his immaculately styled hair. It's not a joke, Amara. You've already been on borrowed time since… Since what? She cuts him off, snapping upright to meet his gaze head-on. Her eyes, usually calm, reserved air, now sharp with the embers of old battles and buried grudges. Since they took everything? Since you promised the cleanup? Since the suits in Washington decided my life was theirs to program? Her words hang heavy in the air, an unspoken narrative carried in their weight. Torres looks away first, and the silence that follows isn't one of resolution. It's the kind of silence acknowledging truths too raw to touch fully. Finally, Torres straightens, his tone softening but his warning still clear. Just be smart. You know the rules as well as I do. Fixing Ferraris and disarming street criminals didn't make the list of low-profile activities. Amara's focus shifts back to the screen before her, her features smoothing until they're almost unreadable. Her fingers begin typing again, methodically. Noted, she says lightly, dismissively. Anything else? Torres hesitates at the door as though he might say more, but then he steps out without so much as another word, vanishing as quickly as he came. Somewhere across the city, Preston stares at an unassuming manila folder sitting on the glass surface of his desk, its presence both curious and ominous. His office is almost unnervingly minimalistic, a reflection of his image efficient, controlled, untouchable. But as he flips open the folder and scans its contents, all notions of control are momentarily suspended. A dossier, though incomplete. Amara Sinclair. Origin, redacted. Past affiliations, redacted. Known expertise, aerospace engineering, mechanical diagnostics, advanced AI systems. Current occupation, unknown. Known associates, none listed. Below, the photo is grainy at best, her features partially obscured by shadows, but it's unmistakably her, the woman who defied him, unnerved him, fixed him in more ways than one. Preston leans back, his fingers steepled as he processes this glaring absence of clarity. It's rare for anyone to provoke such preoccupation in him, rarer still for someone to remain unfindable in a world where data is as abundant as air. With a flick of his hand, he presses an intercom button built seamlessly into his desk. Moments later, his assistant, a crisp and overburdened young woman named Laura, steps into the room, tablet in hand and patience running thin. Find her, Preston commands. It's not a request, it's an inevitability wrapped in authority. Whatever it takes, I want to know who she is, where she came from, why she knows things that shouldn't be known outside classified circles. Laura nods briskly, though the faintest flicker of apprehension dances across her features. Understood, Mr. Cole. Night descends over the city, suffocating it in an almost tangible sense of possibility. Lights glitter, neon signs flash, and somewhere deep beneath this world of distractions, threads quietly knot into a thicker web. Amara moves through her hidden sanctum with precision, sorting tools, ensuring every compartmentalized secret remains exactly where it should. Then, her phone buzz. A disposable burner lying silently near a cup of cold coffee. She picks it up, her thumb hovering for a split second over the call button before pressing. The voice on the other end is distorted, mechanical. They're looking for you. One wrong move and the whole thing unravels. Amara's face remains stoic. One move is all it takes sometimes. The line goes dead just as quickly as it connected. She places the phone down with deliberate care, her mind racing though her expression betrays none of it. Outside, distant sirens wail, their echoes mingling with the faint hum of machinery within her sanctuary. Her reflection stares back at her from a cracked mirror nearby, her own eyes sharp, unyielding. She knows this game too well. Seconds later, another sound pierces the stillness, a forced entry alarm. Not from the sanctuary's main access point, but somewhere further down the infrastructure's labyrinthine veins. Someone's here. The air was thick with tension, the type of palpable anxiety that makes the heart stutter and the mind race. The faint wail of a siren echoed in the distance before disappearing into the unyielding hum of the city. But neither Amara nor the shadow slipping into the corridor of her secret space seemed distracted. Every sound in the room became sharper in her focus, the click of her boots on the cement floor, the quiet hum of the monitors that were processing untold amounts of classified data, even the faint rustle of her denim jacket as it hung carelessly nearby. But now unwelcome noise had entered her sanctum, an infringement on the order that her space demanded. The forced entry alarm pulsed faintly above her, a constant reminder that someone or something had breached the invisible wall Amara had worked so hard to build around herself. No stranger to danger, Amara moved with calculated precision. She reached under the table to retrieve a sleek black Wandin unassuming cylindrical device that hummed faintly when activated. Portable EMP, she noted internally. One use. Let's not waste it unless necessary. Pressing the side of the EMP wand quickly, she secured it into the makeshift holster at her hip. Her hand fell to her side, brushing against the cold metal and comforting herself with its promise of control. With a fluid motion, she killed the main lights of the room, plunging the workshop into darkness as only the phosphorescent glow of monitors lit her sharp, deliberate movements. Her pulse slowed, not from calm, but because her body forced it to slow. Survival demanded clarity, not panic. With steady breaths, she moved silently toward the alternate exit located at the far end of the room. 4 steps, left turn, crouched to avoid the hanging cables. Familiar territory. The rhythm grounded her thoughts, but it didn't silence the questions surging against the dam of her control. Who? How? Amara reached the small access keypad hidden behind a cabinet and punched in a series of numbers, her fingers, deft, confident. The mechanism beeped softly and a reinforced panel slid open to reveal a shadowy passage. She moved in, the automated seal of the exit closing behind her with a faint hiss. Once locked inside the concealed corridor, she allowed herself a moment's pause at the maintenance panel fixed into the wall. Each screen displayed a different angle of her workshop. She scrolled through feed after feed as she studied them, her eyes narrowing at every suspicion. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw him. The intruder. Broad-shouldered, clad in dark, urban tactical gear, a face obscured behind a full visor, no insignia, no identifying marks on the equipment. He moved with the fluidity of someone who had danced with danger before and lived to tell the tale. His footsteps barely echoed as he prowled around the workshop. Amara's stomach tightened. Professionals, then. She toggled through the rest of the cameras, scanning for anyone accompanying the man. Nothing. He was either alone or exceptionally good at masking his teammates' entry. Her mind raced. There was always a backup plan, always a failsafe for scenarios just like this one. But faced with a trained agent, possibly multiple, her options quickly narrowed to 2 extremes: outsmart or outrun. And Amara had never been good at running. She keyed in another command. The metal cabinets in the workshop ground themselves shut with a deafening clang, an extra measure designed to protect the sensitive equipment and data tucked securely inside. If the intruder intended to retrieve information from her sanctuary, he would find himself frustrated at every turn. Let him struggle. However, Amara didn't anticipate his next move. Through the grainy footage, she watched as the man stopped abruptly and zeroed in on a specific part of the desk she had left moments before. Something invisible snapped into place within her brain. Recognition followed by sharp, instinctive denial. Her burner phone was still there. And now, so was he. Distractedly but with clear intent, the agent lifted the phone from the desk. His gloved fingers navigated it expertly despite the crude simplicity of the device. This wasn't a random breach. He knew what he was looking for. Every nerve in Amara's body screamed at once, "Move!" She flipped open a panel lining the concealed corridor, exposing a small array of tools hidden behind a false surface. Her hand hovered for a brief moment before settling on a tactical baton, collapsible and silent. No more hesitation. The choice was made. Whoever this was, they wanted something specific, and she couldn't afford to lose any leverage that she had left. Within moments, she emerged into the shadows of her workspace. Her boots touched the floor soundlessly as she slipped back in among the machinery and instruments that had once felt like allies in this lonely place. Now they became obstacles, potential traps in their own right should she misstep in the growing dimness of the room. She was 20 feet away from the intruder when his mask tilted toward her direction. "You can come out now," his voice crackled, distorted slightly by the mask's filter. Smooth, calm, a voice trained to disarm, but Amara wasn't interested in playing by his rules. Instead of answering, she launched the first move. Her baton extended with a satisfying snap as she aimed squarely for the man's wrist, the one still holding her phone. Her strike was fast, a streak of blurred motion that met its target with precise impact. The phone flew from his hand, skittering into the shadows. He staggered but didn't fall, his reflexes impeccable as he twisted out of her radius and countered with calculated force. His hand shot out, grabbing at her arm, but she deflected with a swift pivot of her shoulder. In the faint backlit glow of the monitors around them, they began an intricate dance of combat, every move fluid, purposeful, lethal. Amara quickly realized she wasn't just facing a soldier. She was facing someone who had been trained to think several steps ahead. His feints forced her out of her comfort zone, pushing her closer to the unwelcome embrace of the counters and machinery. For every calculated strike she landed, he surged forward with a retaliation just as measured. But where he relied on combat techniques drilled tirelessly into him, Amara drew upon something more primal, honed through survival rather than instruction. She was grit and improvisation, mixing martial precision with ingenuity as she grabbed a jagged instrument from her workbench and flung it directly into his visor. He flinched, barely managing to block before the glass surface cracked. "Impressive," the agent rasped, his voice momentarily losing some of its composure. "But I'm not leaving without answers." "Neither am I," Amara shot back. Her breath came in restrained bursts, yet her stance betrayed none of her waning energy. She was holding her own, but for how long? Her calculations were interrupted abruptly when, for the first time, the intruder changed tactics. From his gear, he retrieved a small device, circular, metallic, blinking rhythmically with a soft red light. Amara's throat clenched. GPS disruptor? Explosive tag? Whatever it was, the intruder held it up with an air of finality. "You're good," he said evenly, almost as if admiring her skill. "Better than expected, really, but you don't know who you're dealing with." A flick of his wrist sent the device hurtling toward the opposite end of the room. Amara's heart plummeted as it clattered against the reinforced cabinets, its light growing brighter in intensity. Fully aware of what this could mean, she sprinted forward, adrenaline propelling her towards the device with reckless determination. She slid across the metal floor, her hands desperately grasping for the shadowed object just as boom! An ear-splitting pulse surged through the space, but it wasn't the explosion Amara had prepared for. Instead of flames, the device emitted a high-pitched screech followed by an electromagnetic wave that tore through the workshop's circuitry. All the monitors blinked out, reduced to dead, flickering screens. Every backup system she'd rigged for life's contingencies now fell silent. The room plunged into oppressive blackness, broken only by faint moonlit rays spilling through the grated upper vents of her sanctum. "EMP pulse," she hissed under her breath, realization sinking in. This was step one of a methodical sweep. Shut her down, corner her completely. He wasn't just here to take a single burner phone or deliver a message. He was here to dismantle everything. And Amara couldn't afford to let him succeed. She gritted her teeth, reaching blindly for a compartment she knew by memory. Her fingers wrapped around a cold, circular grip. As her vision adjusted in the darkness, she realized she had grabbed what appeared to be her only remaining ancient alternate prototype EMP wand she'd been modifying, but hadn't yet perfected. Her options had officially dwindled to a single dangerous gamble. From across the darkened room, she heard the intruder stirring, his figure moving quietly towards what she assumed was the vicinity of where her vulnerable database cluster lay hidden within one of the now unlit corners. Launching herself upward, Amara pursued him with every ounce of power she had left in reserve. Her breath came ragged but determined as she reached midpoint within the grid-like thoroughfare of fallen gear. Bracing herself for impact, she ignited the EMP's charge towards that same sphere's contact region, and everything vanished blinding momentarily. While narrative streaked with faint flash, fading combat. Sitting actions. Recap. Following a breach of her secret sanctuary, Amara engaged in heated combat with a highly trained operative, their skirmish escalating with precision and peril. In a desperate bid to protect her secrets, she initiated an untested high-energy defense mechanism, the results of which remain unknown as the scene fades into a harrowing silence. The void left by the burst of light and sound envelops the sanctum like an unyielding shroud. Amara steadies herself as the sparse moonlight filtering through the vents above struggles to reclaim the space. Her grip on the modified EMP wand tightens, her breaths quick and sharp as she fights to orient herself within the now silent labyrinth. The hum of machinery, the flicker of monitors, the comforting familiarity of her fortress all extinguished in a calculated instant. Yet she isn't alone. The faintest rustle of movement crawls through the darkness, a predator, wounded but still relentless. The intruder hadn't fled despite her desperate move. If anything, he is closer now, using the cover of disrupted light and sound to his advantage. Amara's eyes dart across the shadows, her instincts sharp and honed. Every muscle in her body is coiled, ready to strike. A low, distorted chuckle echoes from the void, the sound grating against her nerves. "Impressive," the man murmurs, his filtered voice carrying an edge of mockery. "Are you always this unpredictable, or is tonight special?" Amara doesn't answer. Words have no place here. Instead, she shifts her stance, placing her weight on the balls of her feet to soften her steps. Slowly, methodically, she edges towards the last place she saw him, calculating his trajectory based on the brief exchange they had before the EMP shattered her sanctuary's equilibrium. She knows he won't retreat willingly. He hadn't come this far just to leave empty-handed. Suddenly, a glint of movement slices through the darkness, his visor catching the stray beam of moonlight. Without hesitation, Amara surges forward, her baton at the ready. The element of surprise is her only ally now. But the intruder is faster than she anticipates. He ducks, pivoting smoothly as her strike sails past his head by inches. His counterattack is swift, a low sweep of his leg aimed to knock her off balance. She recovers just in time, leaping back and landing in a crouch. Her heart pounds in her chest, echoing in her ears as she reassesses. He's good. Too good. Every move he makes is calculated, designed to trap her in a cycle of futile effort. Her advantage is slipping, but she refuses to fall into his rhythm. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he says, his voice calm but firm. "Surrender now, and this doesn't have to end badly for you." Amara snorts softly, a humorless sound that cuts through the tension. "Spare me the lecture. If you knew me, you'd know surrender's not in my vocabulary." The tension thickens between them, an invisible cord stretched taut. For a moment, neither moves, both waiting for the other to make the first mistake. Amara's mind races, cataloging every tool, every possible weapon she could use to tilt the odds in her favor. The room may be dark, but she knows its layout better than anyone. Where he sees shadows, she sees a battlefield. The silence shatters as the intruder lunges, his movements fluid and deliberate. Amara sidesteps, narrowly avoiding his outstretched arm, and counters with a swift jab of her baton toward his abdomen. The strike connects with a satisfying crack, and he staggers back, winded but not defeated. His recovery is almost instantaneous. Before she can press her advantage, he launches a counterstrike, his gloved hand locking around her wrist with iron strength. They grapple, their movements a messy tangle of precision and desperation. Amara grits her teeth as his grip tightens, pain shooting up her arm, but she doesn't relent. With a sharp twist of her body, she uses his momentum against him, breaking free and sending him stumbling into a nearby workbench. The clatter of tools hitting the floor fills the space, a chaotic symphony in the dark. "You're wasting your time," she bites out, her voice steady despite her labored breaths. "Everything you're looking for is already gone." He laughs again, low and unsettling. "You expect me to believe that? A woman like you doesn't leave anything behind. You're meticulous, a perfectionist. If I didn't know better, I'd say you're almost predictable." The insult digs deep, but Amara doesn't let it show. She narrows her eyes, her mind racing to untangle his words. He knows more than he's letting on. But how? Who sent him? And what exactly is he after? "Why are you here?" she demands, her voice sharp and commanding. "Who sent you?" The intruder doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches into his gear and pulls out another device, this one smaller and more discreet than the EMP. A faint red light blinks at its center, and Amara's stomach churns with unease. She doesn't recognize it, but its purpose is clear. It's a threat. "I don't have time for games," he says coldly. "Either give me what I want or this place goes up in flames." Amara's blood runs cold. She knows better than to call his bluff. The device in his hand could easily be rigged to detonate, and if it is, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for her, but for anyone within a 100-yard radius. She needs to end this now. Her gaze flickers to the shadows, searching for anything she can use to turn the tide. Her fingers brush against something cold and metallic, a wrench, heavy and solid. It's not ideal, but it'll have to do. She grips it tightly, her knuckles whitening as she braces herself for what comes next. The intruder takes a step closer, his hand hovering over the device. "Last chance," he warns. "Don't make me do something we'll both regret." Amara doesn't hesitate. With a burst of speed, she hurls the wrench at his hand, aiming for the device. The impact is precise, sending the object clattering to the floor. He curses under his breath, momentarily distracted, but it's all the opening she needs. She closes the distance between them in an instant, her baton swinging in a wide arc. This time, he's not fast enough to block her strike. The baton connects with his jaw, sending him reeling backward. He stumbles, his balance faltering, and Amara presses her advantage. She swings again, each strike fueled by a mix of adrenaline and determination. The intruder tries to recover, but she doesn't give him the chance. Finally, he collapses to the ground, groaning in pain. Amara stands over him, her chest heaving as she grips the baton tightly. She doesn't let her guard down. Not yet. Stepping closer, she presses the tip of her weapon against his chest, pinning him in place. "Who sent you?" she demands again, her voice low and dangerous. "What are you after?" The intruder doesn't respond. Instead, he laughs, a weak, ragged sound that sends chills down her spine. "You think this is over? They'll keep coming. You can't hide forever." Amara's jaw tightens. She knows he's right. This is just the beginning. But she doesn't let the fear show. Instead, she leans in closer, her gaze burning with intensity. "Tell your boss," she says coldly, "that I don't break. And if they send anyone else, they'd better be prepared to lose." With that, she delivers one final blow to his temple, knocking him out cold. She stands over his unconscious form for a moment, her mind racing. She needs to move now. This place is no longer safe. Without wasting another second, she sweeps through the room, grabbing only what she can carry. A backpack, a few essential tools, and the most critical data drives. Everything else will have to be left behind. As she prepares to leave, her gaze lingers on the intruder one last time. His words echo in her mind, a haunting reminder of the storm that's coming. Amara disappears into the shadows, her footsteps silent as she slips through the hidden exit. Behind her, the sanctum she once called home lies in ruins, a testament to the danger she can no longer escape. Recap. Following a pitched battle in the dark, Amara fends off the intruder but learns a chilling truth. This attack is just the beginning. Forced to abandon her sanctuary, she sets out into the unknown, fully aware of the relentless pursuit that awaits her. Amara's breath was steady but strained as she melded into the protective shroud of the city night. Her denim jacket clung to her like armor, its frayed edges brushing against her forearms as her steps reached a steady rhythm. The concrete jungle at midnight had its own kind of symphony-muted chatter from bars remaining open. The distant rumble of the subway grates, tires splashing through puddles forming from the humidity in the air. She had one goal now: disappear. But the echo of recent events clung to her like a phantom. The intruder's words led her thoughts down a spiraling tether. "They'll keep coming. You can't hide forever." The truth behind the threat was inevitable. She'd known it for years, but never had it felt more palpable. Her sanctuary was gone. She'd left it in smoldering remnants, deliberately triggering a small-scale incendiary system to erase any remnants the EMP hadn't destroyed. Whatever intel they had hoped to extract would be nothing more than ash now. But her loss was far greater. The sanctum had been her stronghold, the only place where she could corral her fractured existence into something resembling order. Now, all she had left was the contents of the bag slung across her shoulder, tools, drives, and vulnerabilities compressed into a single, tangible weight. Her stride slowed as she approached an overpass where the shadows grew deeper, almost liquid in their density. A brief thrill of suspicion curled through her chest, a survival instinct keenly honed over time. Pausing briefly under the bridge, she leaned into the darkest corner she could find, pulling her bag into her lap and opening it just enough to confirm her inventory. Every tool she packed regarded her like a fragment of herself: a compact power source, 3 encrypted drives, a precision screwdriver smaller than her pinky. Most importantly, her wild card, a secure transceiver she rarely used. It could patch into global darknet frequencies, a blessing and a curse. The device hummed faintly in her grasp, its pale blue indicator blinking slowly. Amara reluctantly activated it. The transceiver's single-frequency connection tethered to a channel anonymized, unnamed. Static gave way to a sharply angled voice on the other end. Sinclair. Her legal name spat like an accusation. "I'm listening," she muttered, her voice low but clipped. Her eyes scanned the perimeter constantly, past the green-tinted shadows, through gaps in the crumbling concrete where drips of the city above trickled rhythmically below. "You tripped 2 sectors when you blasted your own compound," the voice continued. It wasn't subtle. Clean? Maybe. Subtle? Absolutely not. They'll triangulate the energy surge soon. "Let them," she said sharply. "They're already hunting me. It's not news." "What do you have?" "Confirmation," the voice replied. "And it's worse than you think. You're not just a loose end. They've categorized you as collateral." Amara jumped to her feet, her already clenched jaw tightening. "Collateral? That's new? They think I'm expendable now?" "Expendable means they want an example. You're a warning to others. Do you have an extraction point yet?" Amara's lips parted to answer, but the lie refused to fully form. What could she say? That she had 3 temporary safe houses, none farther than the city's outer limits? That this was no longer her city, no longer a structure she could control or anticipate on her careful terms? She rolled her wrist subtly, adjusting pressure, her voice sharp, almost scolding. "That's irrelevant. What's relevant is leverage. I need names. Recent chain of command decisions within whoever planned today's interruption. Filter and narrow target pools by proxy, especially around security liaisons." Whoever stood on the other side of the unseen line did not respond for 10 long seconds. Then came clipped, reluctant compliance. "3 names will reach your feed within an hour. Profiles incomplete, but it's all infrastructure-based associates circling whoever they hired your intruder to scout." Narrow pools. Amara's mind was already 2 steps ahead, preparing for contingencies. But before her lips could tighten around fresh rebukes, movement in her periphery caught her full attention. Shadows. Shadows that weren't supposed to be shifting. Raising instincts faster than practiced memory, Amara thumbed a small-scale scrambler dial on the transceiver's bottom edge. "Offline," she whispered, voice low, before shoving the device back into the depths of her jacket's hidden pocket. The presence solidified, a figure stepping out just into the overpass's muted strip of reflected moonlight, body wrapped in a nondescript black hoodie. Their posture spoke volumes, seemingly unarmed, but subtle tells wider feet stance, weight distributed evenly, sent warning flags through her mental systems. Watching body language meant understanding deception. "Nice night for paranoia, huh?" the figure called, voice casual but just off-kilter enough to rankle. "Didn't mean to startle you, followed you out of curiosity. That exit from your bunker was one hell of theatrics. Real fireworks." Amara leveled her most piercing glare, not moving beyond adjusting her bag's strap. "Got a reason for stalking me? Or do you just specialize in bad introductions?" The figure didn't flinch at her venom. Instead, they raised both palms slowly, a mockery form of reassurance. Their words carried an unnerving steadiness, enough to confirm Amara's suspicions far more candidly than the stranger's face might have. Untrained wanderers didn't speak with deliberate implication. "Names are relevant," they said. "Let's skip chess metaphors or covert methods. You don't have time for subtleties, and I'm betting this isn't your first survival rodeo. So here's what matters. Your leak isn't accidental." Before Amara could supply rebuttal, the figure took another half-step forward, daring pacing like measured acts. "That incident you just fought clear of? Those men weren't hired for retrieval. The retrieval is Plan B after environmental dissolver spiral. Everything your blueprint-founded tools secure could get counter-developed roughly 42 hours before Thursday if you wait only 12 moments listening like I'm fiction." Amara tilted slightly. One part confused decoding rambling pacing's vocabulary intrusion. The foggy pitch truth beneath rambling advice constructs stability potential? It's bigger threading than in gate loop geometrical misunderstandings form? Right amidst billions assumes filters intercept costs, collision among unnecessary. Amara slipped through the cracks of the city, each shadow and alleyway swallowing her presence like she had never existed at all. She was no stranger to being unseen, but this time there was a weight pressing against her chest, heavier than her bag, more sinister than the midnight echoes trailing her every step. The city didn't sleep, and tonight, neither would she. Her mind churned as she calculated her next move. The voice of the stranger under the overpass still lingered in her head. Their erratic rambling had circled a single core assumption. Whatever had been set into motion back at her sanctum wasn't just a targeted strike. It was a coordinated move, and every piece of information she had painstakingly kept hidden for so many years was now vulnerable. There would be no outrunning this not indefinitely. If they wanted her silenced, it would mean dismantling entire networks of protection. And yet, there was something bigger underpinning it all. Amara's presence clearly threatened something far more integral to their plans. She wasn't safe on the street. She knew that much. Always moving, always ahead. This had been her second nature for as long as she could remember, though the stakes hadn't always been so staggeringly high. Her sanctum gone, she needed a place just as secure, just as hidden. But in this moment, she had neither time nor controlled territory. All she needed was a lead, something tangible to drive her next steps. Her path took her to the quieter edges of the industrial district, where the city's hum softened into an irregular mechanical groan. Empty warehouses lined the dead-end streets like sentinels, their windows blacked out and their walls performing the uncanny trick of absorbing sound. Out here, footsteps carried farther, engines revving seemed amplified, and silence had the unique power to disarm even seasoned survivors like Amara. She slipped between two steel behemoths, her fingers grazing a rusted ladder bolted vertically to the side of the building. 30 feet up, she had perfect visibility. In daylight, a perch like this would have been a liability, but now it was a tactical advantage. Once perched, Amara retrieved her transceiver again. Beyond the earlier scrambling, she still trusted its encryption algorithms to keep her lines clean, but she knew each use carried risk. One message pinged back, a forwarded file extracted from her unwelcome friend under the bridge. 3 names flashed on the screen: Mikhail Torinov, independent security consultant; Sarah Duarte, bank-level cyber liaison connecting disruptive sector funding to top-level congressional appropriators; Avery Greer, former DARPA analyst now freelancing at AutoClean Defense Node Contracting Systems. They weren't names one casually stumbled across. They functioned in an invisible chain of private intelligence, people who scouted, infiltrated, provoked. Amara pressed her lips into a firm line. She had no illusions about how dangerous this group could be. To most, they'd appear disconnected, operating in unrelated realms. But Amara saw their invisible connections as clearly as a spider sees its web. These were the people who made things disappear. Loose threads seemed the voids of the underestimated, like Amara herself. Torinov was the weak link. It had always been arrogant freelancers who underestimated clandestine ripple effects, shutting their flawed leaks. He became destination lead. Next experimental tests made logistical sourcing priority renders. Amara calculated backward locks coordinated, router response pivot risk flash control escape, ideally alongside. Soon flood-done compound failures. She couldn't humor negligence any bought respite, withdrawn rec gaps volunteering. Amara lurked in the shadows of the quiet industrial district, her movements fluid and cautious as her mind pieced together the names she had just obtained: Torinov, Duarte, and Greer. Each represented a thread leading back to the entity that had tried and failed to eliminate her. Amara wasn't naive. She knew better than to presume these 3 would offer easy answers. But unlike them, she thrived in the shadows, and she had no qualms about finding ways to make them talk. She stopped in the shelter of a narrow alcove between 2 corrugated steel buildings. A whisper of wind carried faint scents of oil and rust, blending into the lifeless air of the industrial sprawl. From her bag, Amara pulled a small holographic slate, a makeshift interface she had crafted years ago, a device more durable and discreet than a laptop, yet capable of slicing through cybersecurity barriers like butter. As the slate activated, Lines of code scrolled across its small screen in cascading streams. Amara's fingers moved deftly, bringing up her encrypted connection to the darknet's deeper networks. Her target for tonight was simple: establish Turinov's location. Of the three names, his was the sloppiest a freelancer who had a reputation for unguarded behavior. She had pulled coordinates on men like him before, and they always had a glaring weakness buried somewhere in their arrogance. Minutes later, she had what she needed. A string of data illuminated the slate's screen, mapped to a pulsating pinpoint on the city's outskirts. Turinov was holed up in a sprawling, high-end apartment complex with heavily supervised parking lots and luxury glass-paneled terraces, predictable for a man in his field. Amara grimaced as she deactivated the slate and stowed it back in her bag. Professionals like him always tried to hide in plain sight, a fatal mistake. She stepped away from her alcove, disappearing back into the maze of industrial grime until she emerged at a service road that intersected with a quieter suburban feeder. The streetlights here flickered intermittently, their light ineffective against the pressing darkness of the empty sidewalks. Amara slid into the backlot where she'd stashed a stolen motorcycle earlier, an efficient tool for bridge-jumping escapades through the dark corners of the city. Starting the silent electric engine, she sped off into the night, navigating toward Turinov's pinpointed location. Her movements were practiced, automatic, as her mind calibrated the risks ahead. The sanctum was gone, her pursuers close behind, but the stakes weren't just survival anymore. Whatever secrets these names held, they tied into something deeper, some larger operation that connected her fragmented past to the present chaos. And that meant she had to stay 3 steps ahead. 20 minutes later, Amara reached the apartment complex. It was slick and modern, an urban tower with floor-to-ceiling windows that radiated wealth. Landscaping lights illuminated carefully curated greenery lining the entryway, while security cameras swept the parking lots. Amara parked her motorcycle along a side street and observed from the darkness. Her eyes moved methodically, analyzing the angles of the cameras, the timing of their rotations, the makes and models of the cars visible from her perch. Turinov's luxury lifestyle was evident even from here. One particular black SUV parked outside bore electromagnetic shielding, a dead giveaway of someone who preferred discretion. Amara tilted her head slightly. It would be her way in. But tonight wasn't about brute force. Instead, she worked quietly, slipping through the shadows until she reached a service side entrance near the building's trash collection zone. A maintenance schedule taped to the metal doorway gave her the details she needed. Biometrics for tenant access only. Amara smirked faintly, recovering a slim device from her bag, a fingerprint spoof generator she had reverse-engineered years ago from salvage tech. Pressing the device against the panel, she calibrated the scanner to Torres's shared employee rosters, amplifying failed residual substitutions, noted cross-sectors into readable heatless entry distortions. The door released with a near-silent hiss. Inside, the air was cool and sterile. Amara moved through the passages with calculated ease, avoiding passing security staff as she slipped toward the elevators. She had scoped out layouts like this one countless times before. Tenants bought into the illusion of exclusivity and safety, but infrastructure always had gaps. Misunderestimated corners meant blind spots. Turinov's residence was on the 19th floor. Too predictable, she mused. Disposable henchmen always selected upper-mid luxury ostentatious but below the radar of true powerhouses. By the time she reached his floor, her pulse had steadied into an unshakable rhythm. This was no different from disabling old ignition switch frequencies, testing interior panel shielding. She crouched accessing intervals under faintly hall ceilings. Reconfirm angles sharper, blinding quick-check interval cameras, reverted south, axis final. Outdated staffing shifts left minimax loop cleaner interruptions. Uncleared risks minimized. Holorhythmic minutes escalated. Precise logic time sculpts. Lock state. 36-step clearance. Dock relay terminal. Mapped directly handler pure 2836s. Short stack pivot. Gained 3-4 gap cluster holes. Signal incomprehensibly silent. Awkward laughter continues. Tamara's breath misted in the cold air as she stood poised at the edge of the industrial city limits, her body coiled with the tension of an impending decision. She had narrowly survived the fallout from her sanctuary's destruction, shaken Turinov's network to its core, and pieced together the secret cabal that was hunting her, but the true enemy remained unseen, lurking behind veils of power and money. Now, everything hinged on this final confrontation. The address she had extracted from Greer's encrypted files led her to a derelict facility on the outskirts of the city. Decades ago, it had been a manufacturing plant, but now its skeletal remains loomed like a corpse forgotten by time. Fitting, Amara thought grimly, a place carved out of decay to scheme against the living. The night was eerily still as she approached the building, her boots crunching softly against the gravel. Her toolkit was streamlined, lightweight, and lethal. The EMP baton hung at her left hip, her hacking slate stored securely beneath her jacket, but her sharpest weapon was her resolve. She pressed a hand against the steel entrance, her fingers brushing over its weathered surface. "One step," she muttered under her breath, "just one step at a time." She shoved the door open, the creak of metal announcing her arrival before it swung shut behind her. Inside, the air was cold and damp. Dim, flickering fluorescence mocked the once grand proportions of the factory floor. Shadows nested in the corners, pooling like ink, as if the building itself stood watch over the secrets it now harbored. Amara's eyes scanned the vast expanse, her sharp instincts sniffing out danger like a predator cornering its prey. She spotted security measures immediately. Infrared trip sensors embedded in the floor, motion-activated turrets mounted to the ceiling, and faint electrical hums revealing hidden surveillance drones. This wasn't just a hideout, it was a fortress. "Predictable," she grunted, crouching to slide a compact handheld disruptor from her bag. She swept it purposefully across the nearest trip sensor, watching its laser grid flicker and die. She moved cautiously but quickly, dismantling obstacles with razor precision, peeling back layers of defense until she stood at the heart of the factory's catacombs, a long corridor leading to an unmarked vault door. Before Amara could breathe her victory, the ground vibrated, subtle at first, then intensifying. A mechanical voice crackled over hidden speakers. "Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating lockdown sequence." Doors slammed shut behind her, sealing her path of retreat. Red warning lights illuminated the corridor, their rhythmic flashing casting twisted shadows on the walls. The vault door groaned, sliding open with the mechanical precision of a trap springing. And out stepped a man cloaked in authority and menace, Avery Greer. He was older than the photo suggested, his precise appearance weathered from years of behind-the-scenes power plays. He looked at Amara not with fear, but curiosity, a hunter studying a rival predator. "You made it farther than I expected," he said, his voice smooth and unhurried. "But then, you always were an anomaly, Amara Sinclair." She didn't flinch at the sound of her full name. If anything, it steadied her focus, cementing her resolve. "You've been watching me," she said, her tone flat but cutting. "Hiding like a coward while you send others to do your work?" Greer chuckled darkly. "You think this is cowardice? What you've seen, what you've felt, is nothing compared to the real fight. There are forces at work far beyond you or me. You've stumbled into something you can't possibly understand." Amara advanced a single step, unyielding. "Try me." Greer's eyes narrowed, the faint amusement on his face hardening into something sharper. With a gesture, he waved his hand and the shadows behind him shifted. A team of operatives emerged, fully armored, heavily armed, and clearly prepared to finish what their predecessors had failed to accomplish. Amara's heartbeat quickened, but fear didn't surface. She knew this was coming, had prepared for it. She let her hand drift to the EMP baton, gripping its hilt tightly as the operatives fanned out to encircle her. "Last chance," Greer said, his voice carrying the weight of inevitability. "Surrender now. Tell me where you've hidden the drives, and I might consider letting you live." Amara smirked, a sharp, fearless edge in her expression. "You don't get it, do you? Everything you've built, every move you've made has been feeding the wrong equation. I don't hide from problems. I fix them." The word "fix" was the only warning Greer received before Amara activated the EMP baton, its pulse rippling out in a swift arc. The operatives staggered, their advanced weaponry shorting out in their hands. Amara wasted no time, lunging forward to deliver a precise strike to the nearest operative, disarming him effortlessly and tossing his weapon into the shadows. Chaos erupted. The corridor became a battlefield, Amara weaving through gunfire and melee with a dancer's agility and a tactician's mind. She used the environment to her advantage, vaulting over railings and rebounding off walls to disorient her attackers. Sparks flew as she bypassed their armor, targeting joints and exposed electronics with unrelenting precision. One by one, they fell until only Greer remained. He had retreated to the vault's threshold, his initial confidence eroding into panic. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" he spat, his voice breaking as he tried to regain control of the situation. "Stopping me won't change anything. The machine will keep turning." Amara stepped forward, blood pumping in her ears, her shadow stretching long and imposing in the flickering red light. "Then I'll dismantle the machine piece by piece," she said, her voice ice-cold. Before Greer could respond, Amara lunged, pinning him against the wall with one arm while retrieving the holographic slate with her other. "Access codes," she demanded. "Now!" Greer sneered, though sweat glistened on his brow. "You won't win." Amara pressed the baton against his ribcage, its faint hum promising agony. "Access codes," she repeated, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Through gritted teeth, Greer finally relented, rattling off a string of characters. Amara typed them into the slate, the machine's interface lighting up as doors to hidden data servers within the vault began to unlock. She cast Greer aside, stepping into the inner sanctum. Rows upon rows of hardware lined the walls, their cooling fans humming ominously. Amara's fingers flew across the controls, extracting files, copying critical data, and planting a Trojan program designed to burn everything else to the ground. Greer's empire would crumble under its own weight. "You think you've won," Greer said from behind her, his voice shaking with frustration. "But you've only made yourself into a bigger target. They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." Amara didn't turn to face him. She finished her task, pulling the final drive from the server before backing away. "Let them come," she said simply. "I'll fix them too." The system screamed as flames erupted around the hardware, the Trojan self-destruct protocol triggering flawlessly. The heat rose quickly, and Amara made her escape with seconds to spare, leaving Greer stunned amidst the inferno of the collapsing vault. Outside, the stars hung heavily in the sky, their light distant but persistent. Amara stood at the edge of the facility, the stolen data packed securely in her bag. Sirens wailed in the distance as backup forces undoubtedly scrambled toward the scene. She knew she couldn't stay, but for the first time since the chase began, she felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't the end. Not for her, not for the war she had unintentionally stumbled into, but it was a beginning. A path she was determined to walk until every wrong was righted, every broken piece fixed. Recap: Amara confronts Avery Greer in the industrial fortress where his operations dwelled, dismantling his network and escaping with crucial data that would expose the operation targeting her. The threat persists, but Amara's resolve remains unshaken, setting the stage for a battle far greater than any she has faced before.